Yo, that beat y'all.
What's going on, beautiful people? I hope you're having a lovely Thursday. It's your girl, Miss Thursday, and I want to thank you guys for just joining in on the season finale of Beats Per Minute podcast, where hip hop, health, and matters of the heart are always in sync. Again, I am your host, Miss Thursday, and I am so excited about tonight's episode because it's really almost like a full circle moment, or it's poetic and all that good stuff. And I know y'all don't know why, and my guest doesn't even know why. So let me get into it. So when I first made the decision to start this podcast, I looked out in the atmosphere to see who might be doing something similar, close to, or whatever. I just wanted to get an idea of like what the need would be. At first I really actually wanted to do a podcast just focusing on DJs, just to love on DJs and give them their shine that I felt like they deserved. And somehow it morphed into the idea of bringing my two passions, health and hip hop, together, and also giving space to talk about like real life things, about going through grief, about dealing with different issues in life, and giving a platform to hip hop artists and people in the community that have really just went through, whether they were artists back in the day and now they're just working a regular 9 to 5, and, what that feels like, whatever the case might be. I just wanted to have something different. And when I looked out, I came across this podcast called Hip Hop Can Save America. I immediately subscribed. I immediately subscribed to the newsletter, and it is still a little unreal that I am actually speaking to the person that became my mentor from afar and my inspiration for wanting to really do something positive in this hip hop space. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to the world, if you do not know this man on my side, thank you for just a big thank you and a welcome from BPM to Mr. Manny Faces. Manny, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You don't really come on. I was expecting all of that. Now
I know. That's what I said. Little drama, but
I appreciate the appreciation. I really do. That's I know I'm really good with words. I know all the words, and I don't have many words right now. So I appreciate you. Yeah, that was dope. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
I'm glad and I've watched live, obviously, what you're doing when we talked, and I'll be here, but and I see that this is a natural connection because we do the same, like we're in the same mind space, I think. And you came on my show, and we're lingering and participating, and so now I see that that's because we're in the same mind space, so it makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I really do appreciate you, and I definitely just wanted to thank you, for what you do, and wanted to make sure that if no one else ever tells you that you have inspired them, or that you've even just given them the idea that, like, I don't have to do this like everybody else. I can do this and create my own lane, and and no matter what, just stay in that. So I want to say thank you so much for just being you, doing what you do, being so supportive. I was it was like shocking to me when I saw you in that group, because I was like, wait a minute, that's
right.
I'm like, and he's just like, yeah, I'll just be on anybody's, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me shoot my shot.
100%. Half the time I like, and I really do. I appreciate it. And half the time as if someone is like, who's this guy? You'll find out. But a lot of times I'm like, nah, I should be on everyone should be reaching out to me. I know it all. I've done all this work. I study the game. I'm mad supportive. And then sometimes I'm like, all right, no, it's fine. It's cool. Who am I? I'm just a guy. It's cool. So I'm very humble. But then sometimes like, I don't know. So I really actually do. It means a lot when somebody values what I have to say or, bring to the table, because we all got things to say. Everybody got things to say. And we know there's a plethora of people out there who will find any place to say it.
Absolutely.
But if you're a discerning kind of person, you're like, oh, let me get, the right kind of people. And you have a focus, and then you reach out to me and say, oh, I see what you're doing. And I think that'd be valuable to the people that pay attention to me. That's, I'm honored for that. So yeah.
No
Thanks.
problem. Yeah. So, going to just get this little party started, right?
All right.
Normally, I like to ask, everyone that comes on the show, what was that song or that thing that, made you want to be a part of this hip hop community?
Yeah. So I grew up in New York. I'm as you could probably tell, because I talk fast and I'm in Atlanta now. So I tell people like, I'm from New York. They're like, we know. Excuse me. But I grew up in Long Island. So we were, the sixth borough, right outside of Queens. It was about 20 minutes from Queens border. And so and I'm about the age of hip hop, give or take. So, kind of coming up at the same time. And it's funny, I was just giving props to Marley Marl on Facebook today, because I saw he got the I Am Hip Hop award, and Marley, like as a early, like trying to get into like producing and DJing, like Marley Marl was somebody. So of course we had those two radio station, icons, Red Alert and Mr. Magic. And so I'd be in the basement of my man Craig house in Westbury, Long Island, and we'd be there Friday, Saturday nights, and that's what was on the radio Friday and Saturday nights. You only could have hip hop on the air like from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturdays. The only time rap would be on the radio. So around that time, so 80s, late 80s, and so it was in the atmosphere. The song that did it, I mean, because everyone has the song, and it's My Melody, by Rakim. Yeah. So when I heard that, now we had heard, because stuff had come out before that, and we but that was like it's you stopped and it was like, what is this? And just the sonics of it, and the lyricism, and the obviously Rakim just a transformational MC. The sonics of it were so like unearthly, you know what I mean? And it just hit, and we were like, yo. And then of course, that'd be the thing you want to hear again and again. You go find it, and that was the song. So that was the one that did it. Yep. Melody, Rakim.
So Eric B for President was the one for me.
Okay.
It stays, I still play it on a regular. I had never heard anything like it, but My Melody is definitely like one of those songs, like just the idea of that like whistle, it was just crazy, and I don't think that we even give, because a lot of us, we always talk about Rakim, the God MC, and he deserves all that, but we don't talk about Eric B enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I feel like we have to make sure, especially those of us that come from that era, and we know how important the DJs and the DJs becoming producers and all of that was, that we include them in that conversation.
And I was just gonna say, I think like Marley Marl also had some connection to them. Like Eric B was over in Queensbridge too, so there was that kind of Long Island to Queensbridge connection. I was from Long Island, so Rob being or Eric being Rakim, but Rakim being like a wine dance dude, like from and like you felt some kind of pride for all that. But absolutely, like just the matter of fact, that whole first album, and just sonically and lyrically and delivery wise, to me changed the game. It's always it's why if you're gonna ask, he's Rakim's always my top 105. It was just a transformational thing. And if you were alive in the time before and after, that. If you're cognizant of it before and after, then So because it's always funny, and and I have said at different times, I heard Chuck D say once that when we talk about like
eras or generations in hip hop, it's really like every 5 years, not every 10 years. And when you really look at it, like every 5 years, the music has changed.
Right.
So like when you think about like the early 80s going into like 85, 86, and you have the Eric B and Rakim's coming out, it's like, now there's this whole different sound and this idea of like a really like lyrical,
Right.
rapper. You have then of course Slick Rick and Big Daddy Kane and all these people coming out, and like now you're hearing these stories that's like a little bit different than what Run and them might have been doing or what the
100%.
Fat
Yep.
Boys and them was doing, but it was still like just dope. It was still, but it just became different,
Yep.
and it's so cool when you think about like, we was there, you know what I mean? Like to
Right.
kind of hear and see some of that stuff, and and it's always just fun when you get to hear the stories behind the stories and all that stuff. But yeah, but
Indeed.
that's so yeah. So
Yep.
a really major thing, because I actually have been, kind of like, maybe about 5 years ago when my brother first passed away, I was really looking to, I knew I wanted to be able to do something to help. Like I felt like, when my brother passed, there was a lot of the first generation hip hop artists that he had been doing panels with that, had reached out and was so loving to me and, just checking in on a regular basis. And I wanted to, find a way to be able to give back to the hip hop community. And then also I became really hyper aware of how many hip hop artists were passing away, from strokes and heart attacks and and different things like that. And I did, I came across over the years, different things, and like, so even your foundation, was one of the things I came across. So can you kind of talk about like, becoming a music lover or a hip hop lover, DJing and going into this space where you become not just, an activist, but someone who really is like pushing for the idea that hip hop is more than just music. It is a culture, and it can literally help in so many different spaces.
Yeah. It it was a very jagged path, I guess, but from early days, I did get involved in the music side of hip hop. So I did get involved in the music making side. I started DJing. My dad was a jazz and blues connoisseur, so we had records and he had tape, reel to reels, so but he was playing music from, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. So I was getting a lot of early doo-wop stuff. I was getting a lot. So I got into the music side of things and I said, let me learn DJing. That seemed fun. And he had turntables and records. And so I'm cutting up his turntables he didn't like very much. And I got in trouble for that. As all young DJs did back then. We all got yelled at from our dads. It's not meant for that. But so I say that to say that got me into DJing, sort of got me into like trying to replicate the beats. I always wanted to play the drums in school, but they, like when you go to band, they don't let you do drums. And I was like, fine, I'll play the harmonica. They were like, we don't do that either. Here's a cello. And I'm like, I don't want the cello.
Yeah, they was always trying to give the cello away.
Because nobody wants a cello. And I'm like, I wanted the harmonica. We don't do the harmonica here, bro. And I'm like, anyway, so I got a little beat machine. I started like programming beats and trying to replicate and just get into that move. So I say that to say that I went into the production side, the music side for a long time. Started doing remixes and such. And some years later, years later, I was doing remixes and putting them out on the internet and MySpace, and I was getting some acclaim. So I was kind of in the mix musically. Culturally as well, because we had people who were, of the culture doing things related to music, but not always the music itself. So you start to pick up on some of that. But later in life, as you get older and you start seeing people that are doing things that are sort of deeper, right? A deeper intersection between the music and the culture and the rest of society, right? And this really came to me when I said, around late 2000s, I was working for a newspaper on Long Island, the Long Island Press. They're still around. I'm not with them anymore. And so I worked and so I got myself into journalism. Now I was a writer. I could write. I wasn't a writer by trade. I wasn't anything by trade, to be honest. But I got in where I fit in, right? And so I started doing graphic design for the newspaper. I started working with these journalists that were really great. They were like the kind of scrappy journalists that would like go after the cops, the crooked cops. You know what I mean? They would go after the company that tried to build a office on top of like bad soil from a cancer causing agent. Isn't it? I'm like, oh, this is dope. These guys are like, they're grimy.
Like, real. Yeah.
They're gritty. It's not the corporate newspaper. They don't. The corporate newspaper's like, but we actually went after the corporate newspaper, like, you know what I mean, for like fabricating their distribution numbers and stuff. So I'm like, oh, I like these guys. These guys are hip hop. These guys are like, right? They going through the back door. If you're not letting them in the front door, they'll figure it out. So I liked it. It was scrappy. And I was like, let me start doing this. So I started. So I was in New York, late 2000s. So you already know New York hip hop is dead, right? Houston is popping. Atlanta is becoming the new, center point. And they're kind of, side-eyeing New York hip hop. Now, we will and always be the Mecca, but I understand because the media would go where the money is, and if it's popping in the strip club culture down south, it's popping out in Houston. They're not paying attention to New York anymore. New York rappers trying to sound like out-of-staters to try to get put on. So we're in an identity crisis in New York. But I started sticking my nose around New York City, and I saw that there were people who were doing music, independent scene. End of the week, a 15-year running Sunday showcase. Freestyle Monday is a 15-year running like freestyle battle, that was going on every week. There were independent artists that would travel the world and then come back and touch down in New York and sell out, a venue, and everyone's singing along their lyrics. But you never heard this person on the radio. You never seen them in the source. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. There's this happening here. I started covering it. I started an online publication called Birthplace Magazine, Birthplace of Hip Hop. I did that for a bunch of years, and I covered the scene, and I was the guy. I was the guy out there in all the indie shows, and I was writing up all the new releases, and I had a calendar of events, and nobody, I could safely say nobody, at least at this time, was more supportive of New York's hip hop scene than I was.
Gotcha.
Nobody. But while I was doing that, I ran into artists who were like, yeah, I'm an indie artist. I do these records, and but I also go into Rikers Island on the weekends, and I talk with the young men that are, incarcerated folk, and we work out. We have workshops, and we do poetry and hip hop, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Then I find someone's like, oh, I'm a teacher. I teach, in PS whatever, and I'm able to incorporate my, hip hop into the classroom. I'm not even a rapper. I'm not even an MC, but I'm a school psychologist, and I've set up this small recording studio in the school in the Bronx, and we have kids come in on their, free periods, and they work out their trauma because they're in the middle of the Bronx. They're in these neighborhoods that are rough and tumble. We work out their trauma through music, through this little studio project that I got a grant for. And I started to say, wow, dang, there's so many people like using hip hop in these ways to get to what you're talking about that can be helpful and can be, I knew people that we had a program that uses rap to teach financial literacy to kids. I'm like, oh God, well, we don't need that. So I find out all these people that are doing these wonderful things, and I'm like, who's telling these stories? Because you don't hear about this
at all. Yeah.
At all. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, this may be kind of where I need to focus a little bit more. So at some point, fast forward, long story short, I sunset, Birthplace Magazine. I said, love New York. But the folks that are doing this kind of work, they're worldwide, they're nationwide, and they're global. So if I want to start telling their stories a little bit more, that's probably where I need to focus. And so I started the nonprofit as sort of a home for that. And I did some writing, and then that's where the podcast came into play. I said, well, I'm a journalist. I got audio background. I was already dabbling in podcasting way before it became a thing. And I said, well, this is probably the best medium for me to be able to, tell these stories or interview these folks who are doing this work. And that's the path that basically I took. And, that's kind of where I am now. That's stuck because that work I think is sort of, I guess, my calling.
Mm-hmm.
for a better lack of a better word. Tell those stories of the people who are doing the work that can use hip hop authentically, connect, use their authentic connection with hip hop in ways that can uplift humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I
Yeah.
got here.
I think that's dope. And I think that it's important because, when you think of it, it makes sense. I mean, generally anyone that is, been around long enough to have seen either the birth of hip hop or came along once hip hop had begun, or grew up always hearing it, because sometimes it's always weird to think like my kids have never lived in a world without hip hop,
Right. Right.
and I mean I was a toddler when hip
Right.
hop
Right. Yeah.
it was
Me too.
horrible
Yeah. I was
for
so
me,
little.
but
Yeah.
by the time I realized what was going on, I was a little bit older and they had been around for a little bit. But someone like my brother and and different people of that era that remember a time when it wasn't, these are the people who are teaching and going to, and doing whatever. And so, when it's something that has become a part of you, or like for me, I always felt like, hip hop was more than just music. It really was a culture.
Yeah.
It's the way that we dressed. It was the way that we talked. It was the way that we communicated with each other. It was, really just a community. And so from that community, as a nurse,
Right.
I'm using hip hop to want to make sure that I'm, able to help someone, or, be able to talk more about health literacy and equality, and about grief, and, and mental, things that we kind of go on, you know what I mean? Thanks, cuz he's talking about I still suck on my thumb. Never sucked my thumb. But anyway, so you have all these people in the world that have found ways to, use hip hop to teach STEM, and use hip hop to teach all these different aspects, because like I thought it was really dope when you started seeing professors, at different colleges actually using rap lyrics, in their classes, and breaking down, Jay-Z verses or Nas verses or whatever. Even, the hip hop artists themselves, for a while, Bun B was teaching at the University of Houston, so that's, it's like, it's put us in spaces that, I'm sure we probably would have not, some of us might not have been in if it wasn't for, this culture. And so it's almost like the culture is just giving back to itself,
Right. Yeah. It does. There's so many examples of what you're talking about. Obviously, you know of them. I know of them. A lot of people don't. Most people don't. Most of hip hop heads don't even, because they end up being jaded by, the way the commercial aspect of the rap music side, of the entertainment side of the entire culture gets fed to the world. So when I started seeing this, I'm like, you talk about professors. I interviewed folks that, they teach literary devices by, Shakespeare's confusing, but let me show you these J. Cole verses and how he's using similes, metaphors, and how William Shakespeare did it. Same thing, it's the same theory. Financial literacy, computer coding. When I seen this wonderful program called Breakbeat Code, where young folks in 4 hours, these 14, 15-year-olds never touched a computer, never learned about computer programming, didn't even know that was a thing. You sit them down in front of a computer, and in a few minutes, they're building beats by pulling from a repository of loops, and stacking the loops like we did on, Fruity Loops. Shouts to my producer heads in the house, you know what I mean? Or even on an MPC or whatever. And they're doing it, but you can't just drag and drop. You got to program and say, call, from bin 1, loop 9, place it at spot 1, go for 4 bars, but all through Python programming. I'm like, yo, like, it's like you said, it makes sense, right? First of all, we all learned how to learn from music. Like, we all learned from A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's a rap right there. That's bars. We learned a cleanup song. Like, we know that inherently that works. Sesame Street was just like, you know what I mean?
Sesame Street, what was it? what was the other one?
Electric Company.
Exactly, like, Schoolhouse Rock, like all of it was
100%.
always,
So it's all in the DNA, and hip hop is just like the cooler, but also the more vast way to take that and amplify it, because you could learn the subjects, reading, writing, arithmetic, and it's easy, right? You could say, oh, and they did this. One of the earliest things I found was an organization called Fresh Prep. I don't think they're around anymore, but they're in New York City. Big New York Times story on them, and I met one of the teaching artists who was also like one of the artists that I knew, and he's like, "Yo, we got this program. It's called Fresh Prep." And in New York, you have these things, these Regents exams, which are like state qualifying exams for high school. And in some of these schools, these kids weren't getting all the right educational love and resources, so they were failing. They brought in teaching artists, said, okay, these rappers know how to take the material and put it in the form of a song. The kids know how to memorize songs, because we all know how to memorize songs. Next thing you know, they memorize all the material. People that had failed the course, the test like 2 or 3 times, now all of a sudden 80-something% were passing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first of all, so the first question comes to me, and I'm not educated traditionally in that I don't have a degree or whatever, but I'm the son of a professor of sociology, a distinguished professor, and was brilliant. So I got a lot of like that osmosis. So I'm looking at him like, why as an educator, why are we not doing this everywhere? Like, if I don't understand, if it works, like we all know, I could sit right now and recite rap songs from 1980, whatever, you know what I mean? We know how to, and then on top of that, you find out people are like, yes, and they're like, we can memorize stuff. We can also use it to help with creativity and creative thinking and, self-expression and emotion and self-esteem. And, and again, we're talking about, look, I'm not of those communities, you know what I mean? But I recognize the need for like outside of the box thinking to erase the effects of, oppressive educational,
right.
Methodologies that have been harmful all these decades and centuries. So I'm like, why aren't we doing more of this? And it became clear because my dad was brilliant professor, taught sociology, taught urban studies, sociology of minorities. My dad was kind of woke before woke was a thing. Like I joked that when I was 8, I knew what gentrification meant. Like my dad would put me on early, and we grew up in, in a I won't say the hood, but in a neighborhood, you know what I mean? It wasn't the hood, but it was like hood adjacent. We were, you know what I mean? So I had experiences in cultural immersion. And all of that to me was like, if we got ways to help people, especially young kids, again, who come from communities where they're underfunded, under-resourced, underloved by the institutions, why aren't we doing this more? And the answer, because I started asking the questions and say to Dr. Bettina Love and them, like, why aren't, she says, they don't understand. We take this to the school boards. We take this to the teachers, and they don't get it. They just think rap and bad and, violence and terrible things, AKA the othering that, obviously since the beginning of time. And we have to find ways to, work the system and get it in. I said, okay, all right. I said, what would probably help you, in my mind, is more journalism, talking about these things, more research, talking about these things. Like if you had actually, I did a small research study a few years ago, but now more research is being done by the academics and the nerdy nerds that know how to do all that stuff. And that's great because when you go to these school districts now, you can hold the papers. You got the receipts now. You got research that shows they didn't have that, 5, 6, 10 years ago. So we're seeing more and more of it being accepted. But I said, well, maybe my job is just, amplify it, tell the stories, and give them sort of the ammunition they might need so that they know what we know. Dr. Bettina Love said it the best. She says, in hip hop, we just know it. She says, you'll be in a cipher. Let's say you're in a dance cipher, right? And you just walk up on a cipher, but you're a dancer. You recognize a dance cipher. You kind of get in now you in a cipher. You wait and you seeing people dancing. She says, nobody like raises their hand and says, can I dance now? Like you never met these people. You never been here, but the unspoken language and when to go. You don't interrupt somebody. You know when their time is done. You kind of wait your turn. You go in, you don't hog it. You do your little piece and you step back out. It's respect. It's an unspoken language. She goes, we know that. We don't know how to describe that in the terms that the institutions need. She goes, that's social and emotional learning. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
Right? She goes, so when you tell them that, they're like, oh, now I get it. So you're in the health field. It's the same thing. When you say, listen, I want to bring these, this mentality into the hospital or the nurse or whatever. They say, oh, well, it doesn't make sense. Music, why would you bring, no, you know what I'm saying? This is culturally relevant, diagnosis or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's understanding the patient better. It's knowing their cultural cues and finding a way to, understand them better. And it's that language barrier that we have to, among other things, all the higher level racism, basically. But, all the things that we have to battle to try to get these, because it just makes sense, like you said in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the coolest shows that I did, thus far, I've been blessed to have, some really great guests this first season. Appreciate, everyone that has been on. But one of the funner ones, I guess I should say, and that's not a word, but it was really fun.
We make up words all the time.
You know what I mean? But
I
a really good friend of mine who was an old coworker. She was a speech language pathologist, and we talked about how hip hop can actually help people who have suffered stroke. When I read a story about this doctor in California who worked with stroke patients, but then he started having strokes himself, and it left him paralyzed, and it left him stuttering and and having a hard time to speak. And he actually used freestyling to help. Like, he found himself rhyming just all of a sudden, and then he started going to these freestyle events to kind of just perfect his craft and do his research. But it actually helped him to stop stuttering. And and when we talk about the idea of teaching with music, the reason why it's so easy for because I remember years ago, there was I can't remember which album it was of LL, but it's he's going through the alphabet on there, and everybody's walking by and driving by, and they're the A to B to C, whatever. And I remember, one of my friends, her brother was doing it one day, and his mom's like, if you can remember that, why can't you remember that? But now realizing the reason why is because that's the whole totally different part of the brain. That music, we remember it, we whatever. Because I've actually saw where stroke victims who they have expressive aphasia, they couldn't even speak, they couldn't do whatever, but they could literally rap any rap song. And it was the craziest thing I had ever seen in my life.
It's like I heard maybe I'm not, but people who stutter don't stutter when they sing.
Exactly.
Right. It's just a different activation.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if we are able to, grab that and help that for, people who may have a hard time learning traditionally or whatever, it would still be good, for all. But then it's even like how you talked about, we grew up, with the nursery rhymes. We grew up watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers and, all these different shows. Everybody sung, me being from Jersey, we had also, what was it, Captain Kangaroo? Everybody sung. So, I learned
school bus and,
Exactly, and then at some point it's like, oh, no more singing. We're going to do that. Because it's you got to grow up and then whatever. But the funny thing is then when you get older and you start having issues with Alzheimer's or dementia, they go right back to
100%.
And it's it doesn't make sense to me. How can
to save your question? I still say not only that, but again, it's a cultural. It's blocking someone's cultural expressiveness, right? Like when we talk about ethnic groups or Black folk in America who sing in church and who sing in a house, and there's a lot of it's part of kind of the way you move, right? The way you communicate, right? You could tell what someone's going through by what song they're listening to, much less singing along to it, right? And then you come to school and they're like, all that, no, quiet, quiet. You come in here making noise, right? You drumming, I'm banging on the table, right? We all bang on the table, right? Making beats. And they said, don't make all that ruckus. Well, hold on, because research shows that sometimes repetitive drum patterns or repetitive beats calm someone's anxiety. Because you saying, no, don't bring that in my classroom. Don't bring that noise in this classroom. Don't bring that singing, beating, rhyming, whatever.
Yeah.
And so now you telling people this is the way they are, and you're saying in this space you can't be who you are, culturally, personally, or bringing what you to the table, and that creates a from the beginning that creates a like a terrible experience.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, have you, just the thought process, because I was thinking, and you went right into it. As Black and brown people, we are very musical. We our whole being is wrapped up a lot of times in in music and in dance and in these different things, right? And so we also, many of us that grew up in this hip hop community, we remember being in elementary school and middle school and on, and like you was bringing up, like you wanted to, play the drums, but no drums. So went to harmonica, but no
no soul.
Most of us grew up going to choir and going to, you either got a violin, you got a cello, or they tried to bring, but we played instruments. We had, that part of art and music was just as important as your English and your math class. And then as we saw that many of the schools lost funding for those programs, then all of a sudden you now are seeing like these high numbers of ADHD and behavioral issues, and some schools having to have these larger programs for kids who can't be in a regular classroom, and you almost just wonder what's the correlation to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they say they can't pay attention.
I don't know if this is. I hope this is a true story, because this comes from somewhere deep in my memory, and I play I'm on Jeopardy. I know things that come out of these weird places, but I don't know if this is true. And then I tried out for Jeopardy once. It's another story. I failed miserably. You got to be really smart. Like, don't think because you get some Jeopardy answers.
Yeah, you gotta be ready.
Man, I went to the whole like where they really try out, and there was like 100 of us, and like 3 passed the test. It was ridiculous. I was like, what kind of architecture? An ancient Victorian? I don't know. Anyway,
you gotta be like Rosie Perez off the right.
Let me just start with the letter Q. I say that to say, like, I think this is true. This was back in, like, I don't know, I want to say like the 50s, when they would still do like shock treatment and lobotomies, like for, when people were, going through where they thought you were crazy. I don't know exactly what it was, but I remember the story. And even if it's not true, it relates. It's based in truth. I'm sure of it. This lady had this child who was just bouncing off the walls, couldn't stay still, was just energetic, and you couldn't get her to focus, you couldn't get her to do anything. And they, back in the days, they'd be like, oh, she has, back in the days, they'd be like, the devil's inside her. No, the devil's not inside her, but she's certainly like, she can't focus, she's energetic, she's too wild, she's all over the place. And at the time they would like try to do wild stuff to you that now would be illegal. But there was one doctor, or psychologist, or psychiatrist, or whatever professional thing he was, said, let me spend some time with her, and spent some time with her, and came out to the, in the meeting room, not like weirdly, but, and then came back eventually and was like, okay, you don't have a wild, uncontrollable child. You have a dancer. And basically put her into dance, and all that energy, like he found the thing that she was trying to do or be or focus on. Like he was able to find it, and it was the arts.
Right.
That's why, like, I'm really hoping the story is true. Like, I heard it somewhere, but it was an artistic endeavor that, I mean, in that case, probably saved her life, or probably, saved her from going through a lot of trauma. And you're so right. I mean, look, Catch-22 though, right? Back in the 70s, when they stripped all the arts programs out of New York City, and they stripped everything out of New York City, including like, police and firemen and, that's also what gave rise to hip hop, because hip hop was created as a, because there was all this activity. And then of course, you don't have any arts programs, kids, and they invented under those circumstances. So in some ways we say, blessing and a curse, I guess. Right. So, but yes, I mean, if we can, if these are tried and true methods or things, why aren't we spending more money on? Well, I mean, we can get, I don't know where you want to go with this. We can get, obviously political,
We can
and
go.
say they don't want to. That like people don't want you to be artistic. And I'm saying you specifically, but I'm saying us in general.
Yeah.
Anybody who's not the elite class, much more so, black and brown communities, but anybody poor, anybody who doesn't have resources, anybody because they treat the poor white folk about the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And they say they don't want you to exercise your to get better. They don't want you to be dancers.
Mm-hmm.
If you use the analogy of the story I just told you, they don't want to say we're going to fund this program so that these kids can learn better. They don't
Mm-mm.
necessarily want you to learn. So in the grand scheme of things, the reason why hip hop can save America, and people say, well, what needs saving? That's what needs saving.
Right.
Right. And the way that we can do that is because we've never, as hip hop folk, certainly as, black and brown and any oppressed folk, have to work around the systems. They're not given access. So they find ways to get around it right away. Hip hop is really good at this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also really good is because you do pull from different communities, right? And then you have this allyship that kind of comes naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could say, what do we got to save? We got to save against inequality, inequity, all these social disparities that happen in the world. Health. I mean, I work on another podcast where we do journalism and social justice work, and even during coronavirus, like all the health and redlining, redline neighborhoods are affected by climate change more disproportionately than others. Like there's so many health things, but the powers that be are kind of set in their ways and they've got their own agendas.
Mm-hmm.
Young people are like, we'll just raise a lot of ruckus, but we don't really have the focus yet. The hip hop generation
Right.
kind of knows what to do to coalesce, fight the power, right? And go in and kind of, we just haven't figured it out yet. We just haven't gotten to it yet. Like I said, like you said earlier, hip hop has always been great about doing community. What we have to get to is becoming constituency.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different thing. And we're not there yet. And that's part of the work, that you're doing, to be honest, having these kind of conversations, saying, what can we do on the next level? And I just put out a thing. I'm like, can we stop talking about like how we don't like today's music? I know we don't. And a lot of it has issues and we could talk about that. And those discussions need to be had. But at the same time, we got to be bigging up either the artists or the individuals or organizations that are doing good stuff, because they do exist. And if you only do one and not the other, you're poisoning the narrative. And then B, remind ourselves that we're old now. Our job isn't to like decide who's Billboard top 10. Our job is to bring hip hop into our jobs, like you're doing. And and that's sort of like where we need to focus. And I don't think we've got it yet, but it's part of the work.
I think where I am now, because I do realize how toxic it is to keep having that conversation about today's hip hop compared to, whatever. And I think where I'm at now is that, I just don't really quite understand why artists of our time, if you will, don't just go ahead and put out music. Like, there's no other genre where, like those artists feel like they have to cater to the newest generation. Like they grow with their following. And we don't really seem to have that. It's like either we don't support when they do, or they trying to go after the younger generation and be different and sound different than what they did, or, they've gone into other areas or whatever. And I just feel like, we need it all, like that was the beauty of hip hop, was everybody didn't sound the same. Everybody wasn't talking about the same thing. And for me, I feel like, hip hop at its height was really social media. It gave us a look into different parts of the world that maybe you would never go to. You know what I mean? So like, it just is, it's really interesting to think.
I don't know nothing about gang culture till West Coast hip hop. I'm a New
Right.
Yorker. We didn't know about them colors and, all that stuff until we started hearing about it on rap songs. And we're like,
Yeah.
oh, and we started
Yeah.
learning. It was our journalism.
Yeah.
That's why I always look at hip hop as journalism, not as something that, should be like journaled, but it functions as now. It also functions as fiction,
Right.
for sure. But
You have,
it has
you have all of the, all of it, all of it within it.
Yeah.
Because, you had people who were, teaching. You had people
Right.
who were educating. You had people who were great storytellers. You had people who just, they got you up at the party.
That's right.
You had it all.
I do a whole talk about hip hop and technology. It's a whole like keynote kind of thing I do for some tech audiences, and I talk about how I learned. Remember where I'm coming from. So I'm a white dude, but I'm on Long Island. I'm in Westbury. It's a predominantly black neighborhood, black school district. My dad is a sociologist, teaches sociology of minorities. I knew about gentrification, all these things. I know about Marcus Garvey when I'm like 12. Like what kid knows that stuff? Like I'm learning all this stuff. But I didn't know nothing about all the brilliant like black scientists and inventors throughout American history until KRS-One came out with You Must Learn. And I'm like, and he's breaking down Benjamin Banneker and and all these, and I'm like, yo, and I didn't learn about that. None of my black friends did either. Like we weren't being taught that stuff. So, and that goes back to my other point. Not only did hip hop find a way to like deliver us information, but it found a way to go around the education system, which wasn't giving us that information. That's brilliant. Like what social movement can do that?
Right.
That's why all the potential's there.
Yeah. Because I think that we're getting to a place where we need it even more so now than we did back then.
Yeah.
I think that, we can sit and we can argue about the idea of like, this news station is for this side and this news station is for this side. And I think that that's what's so important about us as podcasters, and still having the ability to speak freely, give our opinion while we can, because this might be the only place where you might get some truth. So, all of us can't, just talk about the latest gossip.
Right.
All of us can't, talk about who's dating who and, and all of that. Like some of us are going to have to, kind of grab a hold and be like, you know what? Okay, you take care of this part. I'm going to take care of this part so we can get this information out there so we can get stronger. We can get better as a community and we can start taking care of, each other and not, being against each other. Like you have a podcast. Okay, cool. I'm going to get on yours. You get on mine. We're going to support each other. Yeah. We're going to, do what we have to do whatever. And it doesn't have to be, us four and no more. It could be of us, because like at the end of the day, we got to make sure that we are, looking out for each other and taking care of each other.
Yeah, 100%. Each one teach one, right? I mean, that's but that's how, again, that's how it was in the beginning. Nobody learned how to. We didn't have YouTube. Any b-boy, b-girl from our age time or or 20 years younger than us, they learned from somebody else.
Right.
Somebody taught them.
Right.
I mean, somebody taught them how to. No one really taught me how to rhyme, but no, I mean, you learn by listening, and you mentioned
being around it,
and then like you bounce off your sword, sharpen swords, you rhyme it off with your people. So you're being around it. So it was always each one teach one, and now it's like I could just and this is the problem with that we tend to have with the younger generation. First of all, I'm not that guy. I think the younger generation. I think there's plenty of talented artists out there. Even the ones I don't like are appealing to someone. And so I'm more question like, what is it that appeals to them? You know what I mean? Why do they like this person? What is it about them? And I've talked to people who really look at this and say, because when we're older, we look at the younger folk, and Dr. Lauren Kelly from Rutgers told me a great story, which I always repeat, and I'm gonna repeat it now, because she says she's talking to some young folks. She's a professor at Rutgers, and she runs a great organization that I'm a mentor for, and we do this like once a year. It's called the Hip Hop Youth Research and Activism Conference. And it's basically a conference, like usually a 1 or 2 day conference that's run by young college students, and it's hip hop, but it's like research and activism. So it's really like, how can we learn more about hip hop, or how can we use hip hop to affect social change. So, and it's young people and they run it. We just sit back and kind of let them do it. We kind of mentor and help them out along the way. And this is brilliant conference and I love doing it. And I'm just blessed that I'm a part of such a movement. And so she tells me on the interview on my podcast, she tells me, she goes, I was talking to some kids one day. We had a little group, focus group, and we're listening to the birthday song. Right? And you know, birthday song, all I want for my birthday is et cetera, et cetera. And it was a song of the moment, like it was hot at the moment. They're all into it and they're watching the video. And she's like, cause she's a woman, but she's not that old, but still like, she's not like elder, like she's only a few years removed, but she's like, oh God, like this is what y'all like really into. Like this is, extra. It'd be like watching Two Live Crew and being like a young woman and saying, really? Like this is what y'all. So she says to him, okay, this is a song. She goes, they listened to it. They read the lyrics. They watched the video. They watched the video with no audio. And she's like, you see all these women like scantily clad. She goes, I notice you don't see a lot of the face. You just see the body. They got the cake, the shape like a butt, like there's all kind of stuff going on. And it's just a wild scene. And she goes, all right, y'all like this. Yeah, we love this song. We love this video. Yeah, we love this video. She goes, why? They were like, we just, just dig it. She's like, all right, but like, is this what y'all want to be like? Is this what you want to do? They're like, nah. She's like, what do you mean? So is this what you want your birthday party to look like? Because it's a birthday, right? It's a birthday. They were like, no. She's like, I don't understand. Then why do you love it so much? And they're like, we don't want to do this. We want to be able to do this if we wanted to.
That's funny.
I said, oh, wow. They said, I wouldn't do this, but I'd love to have a big birthday party I could afford to have all my peoples come and we're drinking and celebrating and there's cakes and maybe there's, people, but it's not like that. It's just like everyone's partying. We're having a good time because it's my birthday and they want the freedom. Right. They want the power. They want the access. They want the equality that they see elsewhere. I said, well, that just blew my mind because a lot of us older heads, we just look down upon their choices in their music and think that they're just that there's some like I said, the devil just got into all our kids. No, because first of all, like I said in the show the other night, I said Mobb Deep's gunshots used to make us levitate, and Lil' Kim used to be scared of that thing before she put her lips to it. So it's not like we didn't know none of this. This wasn't happening for us. No, it's nothing new. Yeah. But to parse that knowledge about how our kids look at that, and the last thing I'll say, I don't want to take up too much time babbling, but the last thing I'll say on this is that, the older heads will joke, not even joke. Some will be like dead serious, be like, we used to rap about selling drugs and they just rap about taking drugs. I've heard that. And I'm like, first of all, like the former is better. Like, I mean, but hold on. But the implication then is like, our kids are soft. Our kids are punks. Our kids are emo and da-da. And I'm like, well, because I've talked to mental health professionals that will use that song or use that artist as a way to connect with the young people. Like, okay, I don't relate to this song. We weren't self-medicating like that. I mean, we would do our things and some of us were on even more hardcore drugs. And, that was a problem because you're self-medicating to take away pain and trauma, right? So we should recognize that as being, this is all they're doing because we did it. You know what I mean? Especially if you come from, neighborhoods with this trauma where your whole life is PTSD, right? I mean, right. So you all that is covering trauma. So when you hear your kids is actually rapping about it or your kids are connecting to an artist that's rapping about it. Well, number one, we should feel that that's better, right? That our kids are able to, if not rap their feelings, at least relate to an artist that's telling you and you could. So now forget you gonna insult your kid's taste in music. I'm taking my kid to a therapist because I just learned something about my kid by who they're listening to and who they're connecting to and what issues they find in common with their kids. So I'm not saying that there isn't a giant corporate controlled terrible thing that profits over, particularly Black, trauma and death and violence. Yes, of course. But we're not going to solve it. I don't think. I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
We're not going to solve it by just complaining about it all the time.
Mhm.
So we got to take what we can get out of it, use it positively, and also do this work that we're talking about in the background to change the conditions and the mindset and the mentality of the young people that are absorbing that kind of stuff, so that they themselves want to produce and create different stuff. As my homeboy Sandman once loves to remind me, and I think it just happened again. Outkast is the most, biggest selling hip hop record in history. Not no violence, not no gang banging, not no Eminem killing his wife, it's Outkast. Creativity and honesty and authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
If you put that back in their heads and get them to feel good about themselves and stop them from being blocked at the doorway to the schools and give them arts programs that they can get into and show them love and show them compassion and use that music that they connect to as a way to connect to them, we could change it from within, and then the industry is going to have to follow, because those young people will end up, or we hope, being in those positions of power to make those decisions, to make the signings, to run the labels, and they're figuring it out because they're working this digital game like nobody else.
Right.
This music industry, I don't care. They're all dinosaurs now. I'm not going to these panels and things to find out what old people are doing, because it's all different now. Young people are going to find a way. But if you don't give them that sense of, agency, right, then they'll never figure that part out. And if all we do is downplay them or ignore them or dismiss them, they'll never find that power.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I appreciate you. I definitely appreciate you. This has been such an awesome conversation. I could not have planned this better myself, in my wildest dreams. Like, I never imagined, like, literally the person who, I looked to when I was ready to get started. Like, okay, this is, his whole situation is dope. It's different, but it's important. And never thought in a million years I would, actually have you on. So I'm grateful. And this is such a great way to end this season.
Can I just say this?
Yes, sir.
It's the same for me. Like, knowing how you feel, like, we do this sometimes in a not in a vacuum, but that's validation. And I'm it makes me say, well, I got to keep doing it now because there's people out there.
That's right.
but I'm happy to do so, and I'm very honored and touched, and I will do my best to continue earning your respect and anyone else's that pays attention to what I do. So thank you for that.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. So to everyone, who catches the replay, watch the live, just share. We appreciate you. This has been a really fun journey. It was really just something that was laid on my heart to do, and I'm so thankful that I did. I want to thank my sometimes the co-host Taryn and my super producer Ashley for going down this rabbit hole with me and supporting me like no other. I want to thank my family, all my friends, and everyone who's just jumped in and watched over this past few months or whatever. Thank you for allowing me to be me, and for being able to just have the conversations that I've had. Thank you guys for your prayers, for your love and support. I am really looking forward to season 2, just getting bigger and better and bringing you guys some real, dope conversations and everything. If you have not yet, please go like and subscribe to the pages. Even though we might not be doing our lives, we will still be engaging. We'll be sharing some dope stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and and just kind of some little clips just to remind y'all what we've done this year. So again, thank you. Follow us at beatsperminute.pod, and on YouTube we're Beats Per Minute podcast. You can listen to us on Spotify, on Apple Music every weekend. But yeah, this has been a great end to this season. So I'm honored and I'm thankful. A little emo.
Appreciate you.
It's
Congratulations on one
definitely,
season. It's hard
thank
to do this stuff. People don't
yeah,
know how hard it is.
and this is totally, out my lane, and you really, find yourself putting yourself out there. But I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful to the guests that have been on. I've been blessed to have made some connections and relationships with different people, and I would love to shout out everybody, but I don't want to hold everybody because I know that we in the midst of, the Braves playing and we got football, and so I know I need to get off of here. But I want to give a special shout out to my brother, DJ L, David Lopez, who, he took my heart's desire to make sure that my brother was included in my intro and mixed it all up for me. And I'm so appreciative, L, for all your help. My big brother DJ Swell, just for all your love and support. Again, my family, my niece Natalia, thank you for joining on. We're about to get off of here. I appreciate you for everything. And just all the legends that have been on, Sparky D, Viciously from Death 4, Willie D for, coming on here. There's a couple interviews that I still got to do that I didn't get to this year. And like I said, I'm so looking forward to just having some dope conversations with dope people in season 2. More just merging the hip hop with the health and helping people. My heart is with the hip hop community today. I know we had, a couple, losses and, but right now I want to just, again, send some healing energy to, my friend Van Silk, who has been just an awesome person in my life, and, Van, you got this, man. You know what I mean? So, get off of here. Manny, again, thank you. I'm looking forward to all you got going on and maybe doing some more in the future. Yeah. I appreciate you for hanging out with me on this Thursday. Definitely, can't wait to just even watch what you got going on. And so I need to give you this moment real quick to let them know about Monday nights.
Yeah, the new iteration of Hip Hop Can Save America is Monday nights. It's a live stream. We'll still be taking interviews like within there and ripping them out for the audio crowd. But for the, folks that like this kind of stuff, interacting, throwing their 2 cents in. We had a good time the other night on the pilot show. I think we might be onto something. So we'll be doing that Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern. But I do a slew of things that if you're listening, if you're friends with not just any old Thurzday, but Ms. Thurzday, if you know, not just someone that be on Thursdays. No, you own Thursdays. If you're someone that's messing with you, you'll probably mess with a lot of stuff that I do. So easiest thing to do is just mannyfaces.com and all my stuff branches off from there. I've set it up pretty nice. Find me, follow me. And for you, my friend, please yell anytime and we'll whatever I could do to whatever I could do.
Appreciate you. I appreciate you. Yeah. All right. Well,
and we close by. We're gonna have to link up in real life one of these days.
We definitely doing that very soon.
I'm right down the block.
Yeah, definitely doing that very soon. Right, cool. Looking forward to it. All right. Well, you enjoy your evening and thank you again. Appreciate everybody. Make sure you like and share and subscribe and tune in for what we got coming for season 2. Thank you.
Hello, little sister. How are you? Very proud of you and your accomplishments. Love you. Take care.